my name is Brandy Keller. I live in Steamboat Springs, Colorado with my family. My husband is an anesthesiologist here, and we have 3 children. One is 20, one is 11, and one is 9. And I was born and raised in Montana. I participated in team sports. It was one of my favorite activities. Attended college at the University of Montana. Studied psychology and pre-med for my undergrad, and then I completed a Juris Doctorate at Drake University Law School. And that all, in between those things, we had a child. First I got married. We had our first child, and then my husband attended medical school while I attended law school. So we did that together, and we're pretty great at setting goals and meeting them. It's been fun. We've moved around a bit. We've lived in Illinois and Iowa, Montana, and Colorado, and Florida briefly. So I'm a yoga teacher at addiction treatment centers here. I also have a small life coaching practice focusing on performance. I mediated for the Iowa Civil Rights Commission while I was in law school. It's one of my favorite things to do. And in the looking of sharing wellness tools throughout the world to build community and up-level the way that humans relate with each other and love each other. That's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Goodman, the founder of the Goodman Factor, co-editor of Fridays with Goodman. And as you can tell, the good part features and looms large in my presence and in my name. I have a degree in psychology, a degree in nutrition, a degree in chiropractic, and a degree in acupuncture. I'm a certified D Martini Method facilitator. I'm a level 2 NET certified practitioner. I have credentials longer than my arm. And we actually started to have this conversation that is leading to this video based upon the fact that if you met either of us, and I'll say even when Martin comes on board, if you met any of us on the street or even saw us on this video, you would certainly say we would be outwardly the least likely candidate to be talking on a video having anything to do with suicide. And that's really kind of what catalyzed our decision to put this out here, is that if there was a face of suicide, what's really fascinating about it for me as a student of human behavior is there is no face of suicide. The existence of it, the potential for it, the situations and circumstances that prompt people to do it are virtually impossible to discern, other than the cliche that wisdom dictates that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And so part of what we wanted to do today is to offer some insight into not only why that is, but also to offer up how someone even gets to that place. Now we're going to introduce Brandy. And again, as I said a few minutes ago, if you saw her charming, smiling face on this video, you would certainly be wondering why in the world someone as beautiful, attractive, and smiling as she would be appearing on a video having anything to do with suicide. So we'll just give her the time to explain, because I think you'll find there's great insight and wisdom there that you all can hopefully use in your lives. Brandy.
Thank you, Larry. It's true. Suicide is faceless, and there's not a time that I am not surprised by how suicide and that topic has actually given me community. It's a beautiful outcome of my mother's death, which is how I've come to be really knowledgeable and connected to this topic. So 6 years ago, I was pushing my children in a stroller up a hill in Louisville, Colorado. And I had a moment where I thought, God, is this what you have for me? Is this my life? And with the heart of it was kind of like, show me what to do. I wasn't feeling the love that I expected to feel in my life. And 2 weeks later, my mom died by suicide. It was on a Sunday, and I was preparing for church, and my children still needed quite a bit to get done, and I was to be ready to go to church, and I got this feeling. It was a feeling that I had had several times before in my life, and it was the feeling to call my mom. And that the quality of the feeling that I had was one of urgency, and I knew it. Usually when I called her, she'd be going through something and needing to speak about it. And I thought to myself, and that in this period of time, I knew my mom was having some struggle. And I thought to myself, well, no, not now. I'm going to call her after church. I'm going to send her just this picture right now, and then I'll call her after church. And so as I was leaving church later that morning, my brother called to let me know that at 11 o'clock that morning, my mom had died. And she died by a gunshot wound to her heart out by her haystacks. She loved her horses and spent a lot of time out there. And that's where she chose to die. So in that moment, I kind of put her on pause in my mind, like, oh, I didn't really know her. She was not the mom I thought. Whose mom dies by suicide? I started this whole story like, what in the world? That's not love. And so for the next 3 days, I just kept praying in my heart over and over, very structured and scripted prayers. And then when I walked into her house, because it took about 3 days to organize travel and get our life so that we could get up there and spend some time in preparations, I walked into her house, and in the foyer, in that moment, I had one of the most profound experiences of my life where I understood that my mom's life was a tremendous blessing to me. And that every bit of her life was known by God, which I really needed to check. I kind of went up to her, like walking into her house, like, how did my mom die? Who didn't take care of her? Like it was all kind of self-righteous. And in that moment, I walked in the foyer and I understood, oh, like it's all okay. She's known to the God that I love, and he loves her, and she's his daughter first before she's my mother. And that correction of place was really important to me, to know that that I didn't need to worry or try to control that situation. I could just be in the remembrance of the love that her life was to me, and that it can continue to be. And that's that reference that I shared with you at the beginning, that through sharing her story and my love for her, I have found the most beautiful community in talking about struggles and hardship, impulsive decision making, substance abuse, and suicide. I want to set up the frame here that while I knew my mom had certain difficulty and some stress during during the months leading up to her death. It was just in the days before her death that she really showed a lot of unique behavior. So she got a DUI. She was actually drinking in a bar down the road. They lived on a country, she and her husband lived on a country road outside of Helena, Montana. She went and drank in the bar. They said, hey, give us your keys. She had another set of keys in her purse. She grabbed those keys and left the bar, drove home, and didn't make the turn into her driveway and rolled her vehicle. And from there, she was taken to the hospital, then to the jail, charged with the DUI. And it was actually her third in her lifetime, but her first in a 10-year look back, which matters under Montana law. So, but she didn't know that. And so she had a head injury from her accident, substance abuse, and this fear of going to prison for under the Montana law of having a third DUI in a certain time frame. So with that struggle and other factors that contributed to her decision making, I know that that there was opportunity for support. And so I've been very inquisitive and curious about how to support people in those, like my mom, in situations and times like that. And so now, Larry, I know that you have a story about suicide as well, and I can't wait to hear you share it.
Well, thank you, Brandy. It's interesting that until I started to do this work, if you would have told me that I would have ever shared the kind of deep, dark, used to be secrets that I'm going to share now, I would have said, A, you're crazy, and B, that's not how we do things in my family. We keep things a secret. That being said, a little more detail of my history of how I get to own the seat for this program is that in the early part of my adulthood, I was a chronic relapsing overachiever, meaning I was the person you hated in school because I have a virtual photographic memory. And so I did very well in school. The grades came easily. I amassed a bunch of professional degrees. The wall of awe full of diplomas and things is significant. I got to a point where, you should pardon the expression, we had the house, the cars, the kids, the business, traveled around the world, and everything was wonderful. Except I was empty on the inside. And what I mean by that is no one ever taught me how to cope with when it didn't go my way. No one ever taught me how to be average. No one ever taught me how to deal with real challenges. And so in 1992, I think, forgive me if I got the year wrong, but 92 or 3, in the course of a 90-day period, I experienced a weather event, and may actually even have experienced it. It was called Hurricane Andrew, and it was quite a weather event. And literally the eye of the hurricane came through my neighborhood. In fact, came through my house, literally. I received the papers involving me in a wrongful death malpractice suit, which, again, things that no one prepares you for when you go to medical school. And then in the midst of all of that, it really became quite apparent that the mother of my child, who, by the way, was also my office manager, and I were not coping well with being new parents. And so in the midst of, and all of this happened within a 90-day period. And so it occurred to me, I don't know from where, but it occurred to me that the solution, the only solution I could come up with at that moment, was to consume massive amounts of alcohol with some pills for the purpose of either someone else would resolve the mess, either for me, or that I would die. And the idea that dying would be a viable alternative, today it seems crazy even to think about it. But at that moment, I can tell you, it not only was a viable alternative, but truth be told, when I came to 3 days later, after my, by the grace of God, unsuccessful suicide attempt, I was not happy to be here. In fact, the truth be told, I was kind of pissed, because what I was really hoping was someone would take care of the mess. And so when I came to in the hospital, my first thought was, oh, some expletive, you picked the one. I'm still here. And I heard a voice. Whatever that means to you, I don't know. I don't know what it means to me, other than I heard a voice. And the voice said, "You're not done yet." And the rest of my life was so transformed from both the events leading up to the suicide attempt and surviving it, and then the inner work both on myself and eventually in dealing with and delving into the whole subject of what's become my passion, which is human behavior. It has left me with the conclusion that, as one of my mentors described it when I started doing the work and delving into it with him, his name is Nima Ramani, and he quotes, and I take I give homage to him for explaining it this way, that my mess became my message. That out of that great potential tragedy became blessings beyond my wildest imaginings. Now we've told you the events leading up to how we got here. And what we'd really love to do is to be in the solution. And the point about being in the solution that I want to open with is just the idea that what brought Brandy and me together was a conversation about a mentor that we share in kind. His name is John D Martini, and he is, besides being our mentor, he is a world-renowned expert in the field of human behavior. And some of what we're going to describe and discuss are tools that he crafted and originated, and they're effective and they're useful. And by sharing them with you all, part of our goal here is, especially at this moment, in time. With the COVID that is dominating the planet, with political upheavals that are dominating the planet, there is this duality taking place at a level that I'm 65 years young and I've never seen anything like this. There is war and peace. There are curses and blessings. There are ups and downs. There is life and death taking place, I would have to say, more rapidly than I've ever experienced. And so these 7 areas of life as a system of looking at one's own life are spiritual, mental, physical, financial, career, family, and social. And the point about these areas of life is that when everything is going well in each of these areas of life, everything is wonderful. In the work that I do, I have never had a client come to me to work on from a coaching standpoint when everything was great. I wish it was the case where they would just come and be all transformed and enlightened and say, everything is great, I just want to have it be better. But usually, unfortunately, what brings people to reach out for help is when what I describe in the metric that I developed, which is a wheel, where you evaluate how you're at in each of these areas of life. When the wheel gets bumpy, that's when people reach out for help. And I love to say, we fix bumpy rides, because when there is disparity, when there is imbalance, we don't know what to do, because most well-intentioned parents, most educational processes really don't prepare you enough to deal with the inevitable adversity. And even the idea that adversity is inevitable isn't something that we really give much other than lip service. And so the point about it then becomes that when the stress on the system, whether it's your family system, your personal value system, your business, your whatever, when the stress on the system becomes too great, suicide does become, in a moment, it does become a viable alternative. In the moment. And that's really part of the message here is, as I said earlier in all of this, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And so the biggest thing to recognize about it all is the game is rigged and you cannot fail. However dark, bleak, hopeless things may seem to you at the moment, whether it's you yourself who's watching this, or friends or family members or coworkers, you have no idea how quickly the turnaround could happen. And by the same token, the other thing I want to emphasize is in terms of people that we see on a daily basis. When I met Brandy and we started having a conversation about work that we were going to do together, I had no idea that this common experience was even common to us. And so the point about that, just to know, is it's way more common than anybody wants to think about. that the people you see on a daily basis, you have no idea what's really going on in their lives. You have no idea what's going on behind the smile, behind the well-manicured, well-presented man or woman. You have no idea what they're carrying around, both at the moment and in life history.
That makes so much sense. Larry, I think you depicted the capricious nature of this thought. I think it's a thought. It's suicide. It can be other things. It can be behavior. You know, I've heard you talk about the it's like the steps to suicide. How do you phrase it? What do you the way that people live, that they're creating suicide in their life?
Yes, suicide on the installment basis.
On the installment basis, yeah.
Tiny steps we take because we don't know what else to do. Because, excuse me, everything we do based on the way that the mind operates, everything we do seems like a good idea at the time. Nobody ever did anything that the power to rationalize and justify doesn't conclude, this is a good idea for now. I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to do this. Whether it's being on a diet and being anxious and having work to lose the weight, and something happens, and the solution to the anxiety becomes to eat the container of ice cream, having just spent all this time and energy to lose the weight. Whether it's, unfortunately, for people who gamble, for the thrill of it, for the whatever of it, drugs and alcohol. I'll just say that if you would have told me that I would consider the use of alcohol as an agent to end my life, I would have said to you, I don't even like the taste of alcohol. The thought of drinking a massive amount of alcohol to end my life, to solve a problem, I would have said you're crazy. But nonetheless, it's there. And my point in that is, it's there in all of us. You know, our mentor, John D Martini, has this exercise that he uses with people, and I use it with people as well, called the traits of the greats. Well, this is the opposite of that. We all possess every trait. And some of the traits that we possess, given the situations, are not very saleable. They don't offer the kind of solutions that seem to be moving us on the path that we would choose to be on. At that moment, and if I let myself, at that moment, when I opened up the envelope from the lawyers about the lawsuit, the very next thought was, now, what am I going to do? Now, all of what I've worked to build, the business, the wealth, the caring for the mother of my child and my child, all of this that I had been struggling to accomplish looked like it was going to go away. And there was nothing I could do about it except. And that's the big lie.
Right. When you lose your sense of choice.
Yes.
Right? You're like, this is the only thing to do.
Yes.
And then it can be like, oh, okay, well, I can do this or this. And one of my teachers says, well, find the third option, because then you'll know you're really in choice, right? You can find that third one so that you can keep your mind recognizing when you're not in choice. I'd like to see that there's that other
In
third way.
my world of coaching, the messages have to do with the fact that everybody ought to have always a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And the plan C is the one for what happens if everything really goes to crap. Because sometimes in the world, everything is going to go to crap. And if you don't have a plan C, something else that you normally, and I'm going to use the terminology right here, when you're not in your right mind, solutions become viable to you that when you're in your right mind, you never think of.
Thank you, Larry. What I saw in your share about considering that we all have suicide potential within us, right? And to then recognize that, and to then, from that recognition, consider how would I identify that? How would I handle that? And that's one thing that I handled with my mom, and that I continue to understand about my mom. Well, I had some judgments about her. Oh, she wasn't taking care of her body. Well, then how do I not take care of my body? And also, how did that serve her? And why did she make those choices? Because what we know from the D Martini work, and it's a bold presumption, or a bold assertion actually, is that we are all living in our highest values in any moment in time. And so then I could be more curious about my mom and see, well, what values was she living in that moment of time? And one of the most precious values that I have in life is agency. Knowing my free will, knowing that by using my free will, I am in creation. And I saw my mom use her free will, and that, even in its, what's on the outside looks like a really dark outcome, it actually showed me so much about my agency and the gift that it is to me. I also had a dream shortly after my mom passed, and she came to me and she said, "Honey, I am so excited to spread love all around the world." And in my dream, I was arguing with her. I was like, "But you're dead. Like, how could you do that?" And so her death also gave me this concept and this understanding, as I've meditated about that dream and looked for its contribution to me, was that while I saw her body die, the truth about my mom isn't that she's dead, it's that she lives. And that, you said that you can't fail in the system, and that is true. It's being able to catch up and understand all the transformation that's happening, and deriving the correct meaning from it. And if the meaning isn't gratitude, if the meaning isn't certainty, then you haven't gone there. And there are things about my mother's death that I still am harvesting the gratitude about. I don't, in my conscious mind now, I don't see how I would have ever written it that she would die like that. And I know that I love her, and that I'm grateful for her life to me, and all of the pointing signs that are in it. Makes sense?
Makes perfect sense. And even though I've never met her, I have a very profound sense of her presence, even now as we're creating this video. And that's really, I think, one of the takeaways from all of this is that, as I said before, yeah, there is a divine order, and everything happens exactly the way that it's supposed to. And if you look for the hidden order, if you look for the blessing, if you ask, the quality of your life really is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. And so if you can resist the temptation, as we so often do, in adversity, of asking the closed loop question of why me, why this, why now, and can instead go to the inspired question, which is, what's the lesson? What's the blessing? What's the gift? If you ask that question, if you become adept at asking that question, my clients who I coach, when challenging moments come to them, and they come to me either telephonically or at workshops or in coaching sessions, when I start to ask them the question, sometimes I can see their eyes roll, that they know, oh, this is the part where he's going to say, all right, and what's great about that? But you see, at this moment, this video, if we were going to make a dedication on it, it would certainly be to your mom. It would certainly be to all the people who found in a moment that suicide was a viable alternative. And equally important, it would also be to everybody who ever thought about it, and to say to them, ask for help. Ask for help. I have a piece of my coaching relationship with people that I always put out there. It's a really simple thing. It's an opportunity and instruction that I say to my clients, before you do anything life altering, send me a text and just say, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? And then before you do anything, let's talk about it. Because there's always a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. There's always a hidden order. And so often when they don't call me to ask, and they come to me after they've made, let's just say, a less than inspiring life choice, when we get to the point in the review of things where I say to them, do you think if you'd have called me and told me that this is what you were planning on, what do you think I would have said? Do you think we could have come up with something better than that? And so, being in the solution, as I'm sitting here in Coral Gables, Florida, and Brandy is sitting there in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, we'd like to offer some tools. Brandy?
So there's a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that is the first and foremost tool. If you are having suicidal thoughts, you have a plan. Larry, you mentioned something that I want to highlight at this moment too, and that's, to call someone, to call your friends, call your family, get people on your team that are aware of you and what you're up to. But if you're really serious about ending your life, this hotline, the number is 1-800-273-8255. And it's also 1-800-273-TALK. I love that. Talk, be in the sharing of where you're at in your experience, and give people an opportunity to love you. And it's 24 hours a day. You can also access the chat. There's an online chat. If you don't want to talk, you'd rather just type in your experience and not be on the phone, I get that. And the chat is available too. There's also a text. You can text hello to 741-741. And those are free and they're 24 hours a day. Great resources. Larry and I met through the D Martini Method, and we are both trained facilitators, and it's been a great place for me to really explore and ask quality questions and to step into service. And so I really enjoy supporting people, harvesting the gift of their good lives. And so if you need support and would like to talk, be coached, be heard, be listened to, and have quality questions, you can contact me through
goodmanfactor.com. You can reach me via Calendly at drlarrygoodman.com. I'm very Googleable. And let me just leave it with this thought about it all. People, by and large, don't ask for help because they don't feel like they want to be a burden. I didn't realize until I started to do the work after my attempt just how much love there was for me out there. And I never stopped to think about what a burden the loss of me would have been. And so take the risk, take the chance, ask for help. What's the worst that can happen? You'll get a busy signal. It'll go to voicemail. Then call someone else. Ask for help. We are very social beings, and one of the things that's going on right now on the planet is the instruction we're being given for coping with this COVID goes against our basic nature as human beings. We're connectors, and we're being instructed to isolate. Connection's more important now than ever. So I'm going to say, find a way to connect, maintaining your social distance, because that's prudent to do. But we have all these tools. We have texting, we have email, we have Zoom, we have emerging technologies for reaching out and making connections that are better than they've ever been.
Thanks for listening to Larry and me talk about this important topic, one that's touched our lives so magnificently. It's the mess, the message in the mess, and trust that if you have a sense that your life isn't right, hasn't gone the way that you think it should, that there's nothing you can't love, and that any distortion can be made to be seen with grateful hearts and certainty about the love that you are and the love of the gift of your good life.